The five of us had been planning this camping trip for months. After my divorce, they'd insisted I couldn't skip our annual tradition. Nature heals, Maya had said, her calloused hands gripping my shoulder. Maya spotted it while we were setting up camp. A perfect circle of reddish-brown caps around the clearest spot for our tents. Kai and Drew pitched their tent first, their breath clouding in the autumn chill as they raced Jen and Maya like we were still college freshmen. I set up my solo tent slightly apart, my fingers fumbling with familiar buckles that felt wrong without Sarah's steady hands working opposite mine. Blackwood Valley wasn't our usual spot. The ranger had warned us about the mist when we registered, her weathered face creasing with concern as she traced the valley's outline on our map with a pen-blackened fingernail. We'd laughed it off. The walls of the valley rose steep around us, dense with pines that towered 100 feet overhead, their bark black with moisture, their needles forming a canopy so thick it seemed to swallow the gray sky. Even before dusk, the silence felt wrong. No birds, no insects. Just the sound of our voices bouncing off the valley walls, the echo making 5 people sound like a crowd. The mist came in fast after dinner, crawling along the ground like spilled milk. We were sitting around the fire, the heat making our faces sweat while our backs stayed cold. Drew was telling one of his stupid ghost stories, bits of marshmallow stuck to his beard, when Kai suddenly went quiet. Through the growing haze, one of the massive pines was swaying. No wind, but it moved like a pendulum, bark creaking like old leather. "That's not possible," Kai said, pointing with a trembling hand. We all saw it then, trees moving against stillness. The trunk twisted like a muscle, flexing beneath the bark. I grabbed my camera, but the photos came out wrong. Just blurry shapes in fog that made my eyes water trying to focus. Drew laughed nervously. Maybe they're drunk. But his voice cracked at the end, and I could see his throat working as he swallowed hard. The mist thickened until we could barely see between the tents, rolling in cold waves that soaked through our clothes and left a metallic taste on our tongues. Sounds became muffled, except for the creaking of wood that seemed to come from inside our skulls. Maya suggested we leave, head back to the ranger station. She and Kai got 20 feet into the forest before the trees closed ranks. Actually closed ranks, trunks shifting with the wet sound of bark sliding against bark, like a gate shutting. They ran back to the fire, sneakers slipping on pine needles. We huddled there, watching shadows move through the mist. The trees were definitely moving now, no more subtle swaying. Branches snapped toward us like striking snakes, pine needles hissing through the air. Sap dripped like black blood where limbs twisted against themselves. Drew started to lose it. This isn't happening. This isn't fucking happening. His breath came in gasps that turned to steam in the cold air. None of us knew what to say. What do you say when the forest comes alive and wants you dead? A branch whipped through our fire, scattering embers that sizzled against our clothes and skin. Drew screamed and bolted. We screamed after him, but the mist swallowed him. His flashlight beam bounced crazily through the trees, then disappeared. The beam caught the bark sometimes, showing how it rippled like muscle beneath a skin of bark. Drew! Kai tried to run after him. We barely held him back, our fingers digging into his rain-slicked jacket as branches crashed down where he would have been. Drew's voice came back to us, distant and terrified. Then the sounds started. The cracking of wood was like gunshots. Drew screamed again, but this time it wasn't fear. The sound cut through the mist, through our skulls, through any pretense that we might be imagining things. It was the sound of tendons snapping, of joints being pulled apart. Maya vomited, acid splashing against pine needles. Jen began to pray, her rosary beads clicking faster than chattering teeth. Then silence, complete silence, broken only by the soft patter of sap dripping from twisted branches. "We have to find him," Kai whispered, his voice raw. "We have to stay together," I said. The trees seemed closer, though I hadn't seen them move. Their bark was wet with more than mist now, dark streaks that looked black in our flashlight beams. If we separate, we're dead. We linked arms, 4 terrified people trying to be one smaller target. The first pieces of Drew we found were small. A shoe, the laces wet and red. Scraps of his red flannel shirt wrapped around a branch like a grotesque Christmas decoration. Maya threw up again, strings of bile hanging from her lips. Kai went silent in a way I knew meant he was breaking. Then we found the rest. I won't describe it. I can't describe it. The trees had pulled in different directions. Jen went catatonic, her rosary beads slipping from nerveless fingers into the bloody mud. Maya couldn't stop crying. Kai just stared, his face as pale as the mist. I made them move, back to the fire, or what was left of it. The trees were closing in, trying to separate us. Branches grabbed at our clothes, tearing cloth and skin. Pine needles drew blood wherever they touched. Hours of tree limbs trying to snatch us apart. Hours of seeing Drew's blood black in the mist. Hours of knowing we were next. The air stank of sap and copper and fierce sweat and vomit. When dawn came, the mist thinned like it was being erased. The trees stood innocent and still, though their bark was stained dark in places and the ground beneath them was torn up like something had thrashed in pain. The mushroom ring was gone, leaving not even a trace in the dirt. We couldn't find all of Drew. We couldn't tell the police the truth. Animal attack, we said, our clothes still damp with mist and blood and worse things. Bear, maybe. We didn't see it in the dark. They believed us because the alternative was impossible. Trees don't move. Trees don't hunt. Trees don't kill. Trees don't wear bits of flannel shirt like trophies in their highest branches. Maya can't look at pine trees without retching. Kai doesn't speak to any of us. Too many memories of Drew's laugh, of his stupid ghost stories, of the way he screamed at the end. Jen's in therapy, her rosary beads replaced by anxiety medication. I don't sleep much. The sound of wind in trees makes me taste copper. Sometimes I look at those blurry photos from that night. In one, if you squint, you can almost see it. A tree in mid-stride, branches spread wide like arms reaching for prey, bark split to show something darker moving underneath. The mushroom ring was the warning, nature's target drawn around us like a noose. I wonder how many other groups have found those rings, perfect circles of red-brown caps with stems like fingers pushing up through black soil. How many have laughed them off like we did? The forest is patient. It can wait. And somewhere in Blackwood Valley, the trees are still dancing in the mist, their roots writhing beneath the soil, waiting for the next group of friends who don't believe in fairy tales. When the rangers finally found our campsite days later, they said the ground was torn up like something had pulled its roots free. They blamed erosion, weather, natural causes. They didn't mention the scraps of flannel that still flutter from the highest branches. But there's nothing natural about what happened in that valley. Nothing natural about the way Drew died. Nothing natural about the sounds trees can make when they're pulling something apart. I still have nightmares where I hear him running through the mist, where I hear the moment his screams changed from fear to pain, the sound wet and bubbling like he was drowning in something thicker than water, where I see what the trees did to him, their bark rippling with impossible muscles, their branches weaving together like fingers cracking before they get to work. But mostly, I dream about the silence after. The perfect, complete silence of a forest satisfied with its kill, broken only by the soft patter of dripping sap and blood. Nature marks its feeding grounds. We just didn't know how to read the signs. Don't go to Blackwood Valley. And if you ever see a perfect ring of reddish-brown mushrooms around your campsite, run. Run before the mist comes. Run before the trees wake up. Run before you learn what lives beneath their bark, wearing wood like we wear skin. Run before the forest gets hungry again.